Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Mondays, a Eureka 7 rewatch podcast. This is the flagship podcast of high stakes ramen delivery.
By Italians.
By Italians, yes. I'm Zigg, and I'm joined as always by my lovely friend Aqua Gaze. Hello, Aqua.
Hello, I'm not Italian.
Yeah, I mean, some of us can only aspire to that level of style, but unfortunately...
all you need is a tracksuit and a fake moustache.
Apparently so, yes. I'm not entirely sure Italian was what they were going for there, but we will have to see. Also, I have to declare that through sheer necessity, we have to bring an end to the beef between me and Jel about Secret Base, because he has threatened to start talking about how good Clannad is, and that is one thing I absolutely cannot tolerate, quite frankly. So
ouch.
We are officially declaring a ceasefire on that front.
We're doing that right before that new that City show comes out from the Nichijou mangaka, and we can reopen that discourse.
Oh yeah, look, if there's one thing that we do well at the GLORIO blog, it's always agree with each other on everything. So
yeah.
Anyway, this week we are going to be focusing on episode 7, Absolute Defeat, and episode 8, Glorious Brilliance. An interesting pairing of episodes here.
You can say that, yes.
Yeah, it's a real weird and wild one, pair of ones here. So without further ado, let's get going with episode 7, Absolute Defeat. Now, weirdly enough, this is one of the episodes I remember most clearly from my original rewatch of the show, and I'm not entirely sure why, to be honest, but I definitely do.
I can imagine a reason why, though it's perhaps not very positive. I don't know.
This is a very weird episode, and perhaps the most fillery episode we've had yet in the derogatory sense.
Right, it is the most fillery episodes, but I wouldn't say it is weird, because it is like a continued escalation in the arc of Renton struggling to fit in with Gecko State and getting bullied by the other members.
Yeah, this officially is the point where it just becomes bullying.
Right,
this is just bullying.
Because I think the issue is that, like you say, it's very fillery in that the harassment of Renton doesn't really serve much of a point. We don't get much of a look inside of his head or an interesting insight into like what the kind of behavior he faces actually tells about the character he is suffering, or that the character inflicting it upon him. It is just kind of mean. Like,
yeah, and I don't remember it being that mean is the thing, but watching it this time, it clearly is maybe a step too far, and I think it's occasionally very funny, but if you were really the subject of this,
right,
then it would get a little harsh there.
I'm probably sure it also has something to do with age. I think that in this modern day and age, we are more sensitive to depictions of cruel hazings like this.
Yeah, and that's something
because of some stuff that's been in the news in the past couple of years. And I think that, like 20 years ago, most people would be like, well, yep, that's part of, becoming a part of a group. You people gotta dunk on you. Whereas here, it just, I don't know, it just kind of makes me like want Renton to not want to be a part of this. Like
I mean, we'll talk that. I think both of these episodes show some examples of values dissonance from time past, but I think weirdly, I still do have a weird affection for this episode, despite absolutely agreeing with all the stuff you've just said. I think it is just because it is so kind of bizarre. It is so kind of just out of nowhere-ish, but
it is kind of mean-spirited in a way that anime very rarely is. Like, this is something you would expect to see in like an edgy sitcom, like an edgy American sitcom.
I'm not so sure I agree that it's mean-spirited, because Renton kind of just lets it all roll off his back to a certain extent.
Right. Not necessarily mean-spirited as in you expect, like, the characters just openly being kind of assholes.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I know douchebag comedies with heart have a grand anime tradition, but this sort of feels different because it's like it's everyone picking on one person as opposed to everyone picking on each other, right?
Yes, and I think there are arguments to be made in favour of this. I think that it's an episode which works to establish some of the characters further down the Gecko State pecking order. For example, it's an episode in which Holland, Talho, even Eureka to a large extent are largely absent. We're focused on Hap, Mathieu, Stoner, Gidget,
and Boogie Boy or whatever his name is,
Moondoggie.
Moondoggie.
Yes. We'll have some things to say about Moondoggie, but
Moondoggie dog.
but yes, the tone is definitely off. And let's talk about the beginning of this episode. I think part of the reason that the tone of this episode is off is that there are occasionally very serious, plot relevant interludes, which, like this segment at the start, which is cut and filmed like a horror sequence, where
this like alien-like sequence of people exploring a mysterious area and getting picked off one by one.
Exactly. One thing I did not remember about this was the weird four-eyed helmets.
Yeah, they're great.
They're really cool. I like them a lot. Absolutely no explanation why or how that would work, but it's a really neat design touch, which dehumanizes the pilots to a certain extent, and again reminds you that perhaps military technology in this universe is considerably more advanced than other applications of technology. One little bit of continuity I do like as well is that this episode starts with Renton in the brig, where we saw him at the end of the last episode, and they even comment that it's only been a week and he was meant to be in there for 10 days.
And everyone sort of forgot that he was in there, which makes you wonder, like, well, how did he survive? And then later in the episode, you see Eureka bringing him food, so she's probably the one taking care of him.
Yeah, that closes the loop. I'm not sure whether I actually believe they forgot about him. It might just be a metaphorical thing, or they might just be messing with him. But I also think
him sleeping with a picture of Eureka is
that's creepy, but in a deliberately funny way. Obviously, there. Also, like, this episode was interesting for me, at least, because watching it, I picked up a bunch of cultural cues that I had no context for in my original watch because I had not seen much anime then. For example, when Hap and Mathieu produce the package, now I instinctively know, that's a delivery ramen thing, because it has shown up in every anime in history.
Specifically referring to like the container, right?
With the sliding door panel. It's as much a cliche as the delivery ramen business itself, but at the time I had no context for what it was, and obviously they give the game away straight away, but still it was interesting for me to note that is something that I didn't get at the time, but I do get now. I think this episode is one of, as I said before, is a chance to get a closer look at some of the lesser Gecko State members. I think this is the biggest role Hap has had yet, certainly, and we get quite a lot more mature here. I'm assuming that this did not endear you to them particularly much.
I mean, the thing is, like, I think that's kind of a problem, because, like, my perspective on this show has been for, like, past 6 episodes of, like, this is going to be about both, Renton growing up and also the Gecko State people sort of learning what it means to be an adult, to have that kind of like responsibility of people, of like setting an example for people younger than you, right?
Yeah.
And there's been some very interesting stuff with that with Holland and Talho, but like with these guys, this just, I mean, I find it very hard for them to like get back from this. I don't know, that might just be a personal sensitivity to like the whole hazing thing.
No,
to me, this just comes across as like, if you think this is cool and funny, then you're probably not a kind person. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of funny because they really push the boat out on how absolutely naive Renton is,
and how also like freaking absurd it is, like chasing the Yakuza into this sauna.
Yeah, and they put him in such goofy situations. So I don't necessarily think that it's fatal for the audience to enjoy this. But
Mhm.
I agree, it doesn't really cast the characters in the best light. And the thing I will say is that to me at least, one of the weaknesses of the show is that it has a huge cast, and even with 50 episodes, you cannot
Right.
concentrate entirely on every member of that cast, and we haven't even met the whole cast yet. There's still
Mhm.
plenty of important characters to be introduced.
And it's also
So,
the thing, like, these are not real people, right? These are fictional characters. And of
right,
course, we expect our fictional characters to behave like real people to a certain extent. But
yes,
I think you can also give them a little bit more leeway simply because, well, a show like this, you have different people working on it, different writers.
yes.
And, like a character can do something that would, in your eyes, be unforgivable, but later still become more sympathetic because
Yes,
that is just
and
how shows work. And in fiction, we are more forgiving towards that. Like Vegeta can blow up 5,000 planets, and then episodes later, he can try to get his driver's license. Like,
excuse me, it was Goku who had to get his driver's
but
license. Thank
whatever.
you. But yes, I take your point, and the hazing here is elevated to the point of absurdity, where I
Mhm.
don't think. Well, I personally did not take it as a serious indictment of the characters because it
Mhm.
is so obviously something that is being played for deliberate comedy. But I
They
think
did try to murder him. They did
uh,
try to murder
that
him.
dude wouldn't have murdered him.
I
But
mean, but those Yakuza totally would have.
yes, but uh,
Yakuza famously seen in bathhouses.
yes. Let's talk a little bit more about Moondoggie, who is probably the secondary character of this
Right.
episode.
This is kind of his episode, sort of.
Yes,
Like,
and I think of everyone in this episode, he has the closest thing to what comes to a good character arc. I
right.
think the idea that they're trying to emphasize that this is a circular pattern that
Of course. Yeah, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
goes through. That
Like
he was the
I used to be the whipping boy.
yes.
Everyone dunked on me, and now it is my God-given right to perpetuate the
Well,
cycle.
no, but
Yeah.
that's not what he's arguing, right? His argument is that I feel bad because now you're the whipping boy and nobody
Right.
is paying attention to me. So
Well,
it,
it's both, right? He's like the one thing feeds into the other, right? I
right,
think there's like a part like that is that vindictive of like, oh no, you're gonna have it because now I'm not the new guy anymore. And another part of him is like sympathizes with Renton because he knows what it's been like to go through, but he also resents Renton because now he doesn't get attention anymore. Like, it's a surprisingly like complicated portrayal for a character we have basically not seen anything of.
yeah, they do a pretty good job of capturing the rotating inferiority superiority complex there. I think.
Hmm.
I have a quick question. Do you recognize his voice?
Ooh, I'm very bad at recognizing male voice actors. They all
Yes,
just sound like anime guy to me.
so this is an early role for noted tokusatsu legend Mamoru Miyano.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and
Okay.
I was joking about the tokusatsu part audience, I know, but
Yes.
Mamoru Miyano, one of the most famous voice actors of 20 years, he was like Yagami in Death Note, he was Setsuna F. in Gundam 00,
He
and a
was
whole,
Tamaki Suo in
yep,
Oran High School Host Club
yep,
for like the Bones
and
continuity.
just a whole mess of other things. He's Ultraman Zero in the Ultra franchise, and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff there. But yes, this was
If there was like a posh, foppish, pretty boy in like between the years of like 2003 and 2010, like he was voiced by Mamoru Miyano.
yes, and
Like,
that's what's interesting. This is an early role for him, and he's somewhat playing against type here because
mhm,
although
mhm.
Moondoggie is definitely a pretty boy, he's a little bit more
Miyano is
hapless.
usually hammier. Yeah, you get him if you want someone to ham it up like there's no tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. So it's a fun little insight into a time when he was a little bit less typecast. Just a quick note: the first scene where they're on the ground and Moondoggie is filming Renton. Firstly, I imagine a video camera with a tape in it. Crazy, right?
Also, that tape can live stream to a spaceship in
Well,
orbit.
yeah, that's complicated, but again,
Very good, where they're like, we've been looking at your crotch for like half a minute, dude.
yes, that's great. Yeah. Also, the kid behind Moondoggie with the lollipop looks like a psychopath in this shot because it's a still frame and he never moves and he just looks creepy as hell there.
I mean, kids with giant lollipops are psychopaths because they're all German.
Wow. Hey, you said it, not me. Another thing which
how many nationalities can we insult in a single episode?
All of them. Another thing which I did not realize when I first saw this, again because I did not know much about Japanese culture, is the tattoo thing. I did not realize, this is a bathhouse full of yakuza, because I did not know that tattoos meant criminal. Basically,
I mean, they do kind of look like generic tough guys,
Yeah, but
like.
I'm sure I realised that they were like bad news,
right.
but the very specific, the dragon and tiger tattoos are very clearly meant to signal, everybody in this bathhouse is in organised crime.
Yeah.
There.
It is once again an example of something I criticized a little bit last time, in that the surface world of Eureka 7 is like this weird combination where sometimes it is like this futurist sort of Hawaiian-inspired, cool beach world utopia kind of thing. And other times it is just like the most generic suburban Japan you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to defend that, but I will say that this is a comedy episode and therefore playing on broad stereotypes is more acceptable. And B, whenever a culture tries to depict another culture, there's always a little bit of the first culture in there, because that is the touchstone for the audience you are aiming for.
I have played enough JRPGs to know that miso ramen is apparently a food that they also ate in medieval Europe.
Yes, across the multiverse.
Right. It's also just a thing of like, when you're making a 50-episode show and almost every episode they visit another like generic town. If you're going to design an elaborate fantasy town for each individual episode, like that will rake up your budget incredibly, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So they just mostly go by they get a background guy to just draw something, like whatever comes to mind, right?
And I think you can see that in the next episode 8, where there is a much more developed...
where they go to Naples.
It kind of looks like it, yes, but we'll get there. But the point is, obviously, I think because it is for comedy, they are playing into classic Japanese comedy tropes, into classic classic cliches and stuff that their audience would be aware of. A couple of notes I've got here. The kids are completely back to showing absolutely no regard for Renton whatsoever. And in fact, maybe everybody on the Gecko is a complete psychopath. Hilda comes by and she's angry at them, but not angry enough to actually do anything or stop the prank.
Like, this is the thing with Eureka, which is like, to me, like hammers the point home, or is like the nail in the coffin, where at the end, or at least like when Eureka comes in, and like, okay, sure, she doesn't do anything, that's fine. But like at the end, when Renton talks to Eureka, it's more framed of like, Eureka is so weird and emotionally stunted and naive. She thinks that Renton is funny and he makes everyone laugh, as opposed to her being like the only one recognizing that this was like a shitty thing to do and being there for him. I don't know, it just kind of felt weird. Or mean-spirited. Like, whoa, even Eureka doesn't understand that this is kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a very cynical take on it there. I guess. I think that the flip side of that is that because she believes everything is happening for real, she is genuinely impressed by Renton's ability to make people laugh. I think that, I mean, the thing I've written here is that it's a deeply backhanded compliment, but it does work in his favor. For once her inability to pass normal human emotion actually is to his benefit rather than to his
he sure takes it as such. It's like, wow, Eureka complimented me, even though, I
mean, he's still pretty weird.
Yeah. I mean, his simp energy is so off the charts. Like, this is what when what's his name? Moondoggie has to talk with him over like the ice cream, and basically like changes his mind of like, oh no, this kid is too good and too pure to bully because he's just so down bad for Eureka.
I mean, the thing is, even Moondoggie, who is clearly a bit of a goober himself, is astonished by how naive and completely guileless Renton is. Even he is like, wow, this kid's kind of something else there. I think that's a good touch. I think I'm not sure whether this is a good touch, but I thought it was super funny, is that they clarify that Holland and Taoho completely approve of this operation and in fact were the ones who told them to get it on video. I think that's like a nice, weird, mean
the ending shot of Holland watching it in his private room in his underwear, like he's watching a fucking snuff movie.
That is like peak dirtbag Holland right there. Like even he says he's an asshole.
Yeah.
I really like that bit. Again, we get a cutaway to the weird murder mystery kind of
whatever is going. Well, the Empire is facing some kind of crisis, right?
We find the lead KLF, which looks like it's been attacked by like an explosion of magic mushrooms.
It's been annihilation.
Yes, and then we get Dewey, or Huey Lewis, as you insist on calling him, speaking to the three sages. Yes. Yeah. And talking about how they targeted the leader because he's the nexus of information and, lots of classic...
I mean, the idea is, these were not mindless beasts, these things think. What I did find surprising is, like, all this time they've been talking about Huey Lewis in, like, hushed terms of, like, oh, he's dangerous, he's a mad genius. He's a weird psychopath. He killed the last king. And then in this episode, this is like the first time we see him actually doing things.
Yes.
And he's just mostly seems like an ordinary military dude who's like, yep, I mean, I'll do my auditing and this is my conclusion. And he speaks, sort of stoically and respectfully towards the people he's dealing with. He totally does not give the impression of being like a danger or like being an anime villain.
I mean,
which is not a bad thing, right? Like,
what is it they say in the land of the blind? The one-eyed man is king.
Right.
So perhaps this is a hint that perhaps someone of basic competence is severely lacking in the current governmental structure, let's say.
No, you don't say.
But yes, we do actually also get a name for these mysterious assailants towards the end of this episode. Did you catch that?
The Corallians.
Corallians, yes. Yeah. We don't really get anything more than that, but needless to say, we will return to this.
In first episode, we did see that the thing I described as the giant broccoli, which was like a weird giant coral structure.
Yes, it was the result of the Amita drive being plugged in, as you recall. Yes, that phenomenon has a name which will come up at some point. But
I think it's been mentioned already. Is it like the Seven Seas?
Seven Swell effect.
Seven Swell effect. I was going to say the Seven Seal, but that's something else.
No, that's a different kind of apocalypse. But yes, well done for connecting that back, because I had actually forgotten about that myself. But yes, so clearly there is a connection here, as you would expect, because it's a story. But yes, we will come back. We will circle back to the Corallians in the near future, I think. But again, the fact that these important and like serious plot revelations are happening alongside the episode where Renton dresses up in a tracksuit that's too small for him and attempts to deliver ramen is weirdly unbalanced and.
I mean, it is just something we're not used to anymore, because we don't get 50-episode anime anymore.
That was, in fact, the point I was going to come into, which is you just don't get this kind of meandering filler episode anymore. I think part of the reason I like this episode is because it is such a throwback. You just do not get kind of empty episodes like this anymore.
I mean, I'll say, if this were a Super Sentai episode, it would be the greatest episode of that season.
Yes, absolutely, because we would have a hilarious amount of live action mugging to do.
Yes,
but yes, it's it's odd that it kind of feels like the plot related segments, and again, there's only a couple and they're like maybe 2 minutes long tops, but they feel like they've been teleported in from a different show almost.
I mean, it's a metatextual move, right? Because we get the like freedom and goofy shenanigans with Gecko State, and then wherever we focus on the army, it is like very serious sci-fi drama. Like it shows the contrast between their approaches to life.
Yeah, I question how intentional that is, but I do think, yeah, there is something there. I think that one thing I've got written down here is that towards the end of the episode, the crew watching almost sort of assume a Greek chorus role. They're kind of an audience by proxy, reacting to the things that happen.
No, this is an anime discussion. Here we call that speedwagoning.
Ah, yes. Also, there's something deeply surreal and lovable about this big emotional scene happening while they're sitting in front of giant bowls of ice cream. And there is absolutely no explanation why Renton's bowl of ice cream is so incredibly huge compared to Moondoggie's
because he's
bowl.
a kid, and the kids love huge bowls of ice cream.
Yeah, but just
like the implication is that the doggy ordered it for him, because Renton is like, I can't finish this.
But I just think this scene against the setting sun with them in their stupid tracksuits eating giant bowls of ice cream is so weird and so shit posty, really, that I kind of love it.
With emoji avant la lettre on them.
This dude with a tattoo of Holland on his back, which is like the least threatening thing in the universe.
That at least makes sense. Like Holland is like a counterculture icon in this world. Like, it's like having a tattoo of, like, I don't know, Bob Marley or something.
I guess, but just
or Che Guevara.
Given what we already know about Holland, and also just the basicness of the tattoo, you know, it's just a big square with a picture of Holland.
It's just his passport picture.
Yes, exactly. It's very funny.
It's like the picture you get when you Wikipedia Holland from Gecko State.
Yes, exactly. I think, like, this show is, as we said earlier, is trying to set up Moondoggie as the prototype Renton, which really bodes poorly for Renton's future, honestly, because Moondoggie is...
Hey, at least Moondoggie has a girl who likes him.
Yeah, I do enjoy the Gidget and Moondoggie relationship, because, no spoilers here, it kind of just is... I kind of like this guy, but I completely understand that he is a total idiot, and they just kind of have that they just kind of have that loose, fun relationship going on in the background, and that's neat, you know. I don't know what else to say, really. Oh, yeah, they do the thing where they say the title of the episode in the dialogue.
Right.
You know, hey, that's the name of the show.
I mean, what is this? I mean, absolute defeat. This is, of course, a reference to insert Drake joke here.
Yes.
But this is one of the episodes where we don't really know what the title is a reference to.
Both of these episodes, in fact, we do not know what the titles are. And, you know, there are plenty of candidates. There are a lot of songs out there. But I believe that the official ones are stuff that, like, Daisato or other members of the cast have gone on record about.
Yeah, within, like, the official Eureka 7 Spotify playlist.
Yeah, or are so blindingly obvious that you'd have to be an idiot not to get them, like Blue Monday. Yes. But neither of these we actually know the answer to what songs they're based on there. But yes, you know, like I said, I have a weird affection for this episode. I don't know why.
I kind of get it. Like, I get it, but it's just, I don't know, it just kind of falls apart under scrutiny.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, you know, it is the most filler of filler episodes, you know, and I mean that both in the positive and the negative sense. But it
could also just be a time and place thing, you know. It's like how I love the computer parts scene from Railgun, even though it is objectively terrible.
Yes. I think, to me, this episode kind of embodies the early, loose, goofy charm of the show, where they are spending an entire episode on one of the most transparent and low-effort grifts humanly possible, you know. I think for better or worse, it just shows us how earnest and how willing to please Renton is, you know, and obviously I think some of that willingness and naivete has already been broken down, and I think it will continue to be broken down. But he's a very good boy in this
How
episode.
many times can we stomp this poor boy into the ground?
He's a good boy. He deserves his ice cream. Okay, let's move on to episode 8, Glorious Brilliance. And this opens, again, with a nice little bit of continuity. Renton is now on the cover of Wrapup magazine.
It's very funny how this magazine usually rolls off the presses with like a bikini picture of Talho. But this time we decided to put this kid in a tracksuit with a mustache on it. What are readers even expecting? Like, is there an article about how we owned the new guy in the magazine?
Presumably so. I mean, it's never made clear exactly what comprises Wrapup magazine aside from photos of the Gecko State.
I mean, the cover says Media Sex Magazine. So
does it actually say that?
No, it says Media Mix Magazine.
Oh, okay, sure.
It looks a lot like sex.
Yeah, but like nobody ever definitively produces an issue of it, so
it's a zine. It contains whatever they want.
Exactly. Like, I think it's closer to a fanzine than anything else. Mm-hmm. So yes, there probably is a 4-page article on how they hazed the shit out of the new guy, honestly. But it's got big Mike Wazowski on the cover of a magazine vibes there. But I think it's still really sweet how he's still kind of proud of it, even though he is objectively being humiliated. I think that's good. I think he's very, very brief belief that he is being asked by Eureka on a date before he gets cock-blocked by children is pretty good as well.
The good old Microsoft Excel wrongfully assuming something is a date.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that after last episode almost made us feel bad for him, and now is a good reminder that Renton is a complete idiot.
Yeah, there's a lot of shitty twerp Renton in the beginning of this episode. A couple of things I want to point out. The stall that is just selling Nougat, Nougt. Presumably it was meant to be nougat, but I don't know. I like that a lot there.
Maybe they just asked the prototypical DALL-E to render a Noga stand and it got the name wrong.
I'm never quite sure. I think I've said this before, but I'm never quite sure how much of the English in anime is genuine mistakes and how much of it is just them playing that stuff up for comedy. Mm-hmm. But this probably was genuine. I do like it, nevertheless. I also like that Mater refers to Renton as Pukey again, but this time
which one do you like? Boys who study or pukey boys who don't study?
Yeah, just kind of we're going to extend that insult chain.
That's what they call a leading question.
Exactly. Yes. Maurice punks Renton again. This time by talking about his underarm hair. So Renton is not only an idiot, but also is getting punked by toddlers. Just absolutely, really being taken down a peg here.
And then the children start crying.
Yeah, this turn is so hard. Maurice literally goes from laughing at Renton to we're dead, we've been abandoned, everything is over.
Is going to leave me
in 10 seconds flat. And
that's what children be like.
Kind of, yeah. But as presented on screen, it's pretty comedic, honestly.
It is. I think it is supposed to be an allusion to the fact that these kids have some baggage, but it comes rather quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just we lost track of Mater for half a second. Everyone is going to leave me. Wah!
Yes, and yes, it is an allusion to the fact they have baggage, and we will find out what that baggage is down the line. But it happens so fast that it is kind of unintentionally funny. There, they eventually find Mater in the in the care of an old lady, and then we get a scene
alternative aunt.
Yeah, we get a scene we should probably talk about.
Right. Yeah.
How to tell that your show was made in 2005 in Japan?
I mean, yes and also no, because it is clearly meant to show that both Eureka and Renton have weird, like, ideas of what adults do to take care of children.
Right, although I think that's slightly undercut by when Renton says, "Oh, it would have been fine if she was a boy."
Right, no, that's the thing. Like, that's what makes me... Like, the thing is, like, Eureka doesn't know what to do, takes Renton's word for it.
Yes.
And then Renton comes in with that line of, like, oh, no, but slapping is a way to punish boys. And then it's when you realize, like, oh, Renton doesn't know, like, what a proper way to raise kids is either.
Well,
Like,
right. I mean, he's been raised by his bitter grandfather, who, clearly has his own issues with kids. And yes, I think that's... I think that it clearly is meant to show that Eureka is not emotionally capable of punishing the children in an appropriate way. I do think they're a little bit casual about her just slapping this child on screen.
Right. And the child being immediately like, you're like, sorry, mommy.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. So I'm saying that it definitely works as a character piece on some level, but also perhaps you could have softened it considerably and still made the point there.
It's also kind of weird how there's an adult in the room who does not interfere in any way.
Yeah,
like,
and also
I found it weird how this woman is like, oh, that girl is your mom. Sure, okay, I'll ask no questions. And then, like...
Yeah, and it isn't a bit more like, hey, these teenagers are your parents, really?
Yeah.
But, you just kind of have to go with the flow on that one there. But yes, I mean... right idea, but I think the execution is a little telling of perhaps the prevailing style and attitude of parenting of the time, in that it's certainly not treated as Eureka being a great parent, but it's not treated as a mortal sin either.
Right. Whereas nowadays in modern media, you could have a character slap a child, and that could be like the source of so much drama.
Yes. I mean, and again, they use it as a punchline, because the punchline is Renton saying, actually, that's for boys. So if it was a boy, it would have been fine if you slapped her, but because she's a girl. But yeah, it's a weird little scene that sort of, again, shows a cultural and time difference.
A joke that maybe just doesn't really land.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, what is this even about? Like, everyone knows the proper way to scold and chastise a child is to hire a one-armed man.
Yes, absolutely. That's the way to teach lessons. It's true. Also, stranger danger doesn't seem to exist in this world, because Mater happily wandered into this lady's house, drank her tea, and hung out in her lounge.
I mean, that's also a cultural thing, right?
Yes,
it's weird. It's a kind of double thing, right? Because on one hand, like, us Westerners always get the idea of like, oh, Japan and its free-range children. Children are allowed to go out and do things independently. And we've all seen the video of the 4-year-old walking to school on his own. But on the other hand, like, stranger danger does exist in Japan. Japan has had its fair share of like child kidnappings. There are... You see things of like, be careful, there's a dangerous or suspicious guy around.
I mean, it is literally a trope, a Japanese like anime trope, that school children have rape alarms.
Right, the rape whistle that you like pull on a...
To be clear, it's not...
No, it's not a rape whistle, but it's like an alarm. It's like an alarm that kids have on their backpacks, and they have to pull it, and then it makes a loud noise, right?
Yeah, but I also think, it works as a character thing of how isolated from society Mater is, and
it also shows how this woman, like, how do you show that a character is good and kind? Have children trust them immediately. Like, it's an easy shorthand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think it's an interesting insight into perhaps where the writers' head was. I think so. You were talking a few episodes back about how you wanted more world building, more kind of like verisimilitude to the world itself. I think this is the first example of that, right? Because
it's very interesting.
We get an idea of culture, of human behavior outside of the very basic and militarized stuff we've seen, right? So the Vodorak, which is it a movement? Is it an underground resistance? Is it a religion?
It definitely seems to be a religion, because they point out like that this woman has a particular tea ritual, like a sort of prayer or a sort of blessing that she performs. She also speaks about how like fate gives her power, gives her strength,
Excuse
or how
me, I
she's
think
like,
you mean destiny.
yes, or how she's blessed by a deity. Like it seems to be the case that Vodorak or whatever
Vodorak,
is Vodorak, Goldorak is a
Ragnarok.
deity of sorts, right?
Yeah, some
And
sort of.
I don't know, man. When the only group reasonably resisting your evil militaristic empire are a bunch of religious zealots, that does not usually spell well.
Well, we'll have to see about that. I will
Yeah.
say that, like,
I mean,
of-
that's the thing, right? Maybe there aren't even a resistance organization. Maybe the Empire just labels them as such
well,
because that gives them a convenient excuse to get rid of them.
it's fairly noticeable that they never actually clarify why this lady is wanted or whether she
Right.
actually did do any terrorist things or not.
I mean, she is inherently like. She is a danger. She does not do anything that is a
Right.
danger to
Yes,
the
and
state.
that's partially the point, of course. They want her
Right.
for what she is, not for what
Mhm.
she's done. But I think we get some pretty strong overtones of kind of like Eastern mysticism, as you would expect from a Japanese show in
It's like
the
a
Vodorak.
weird mishmash of like cultural minorities. Like she kind of dresses like a Native American woman. She has some
There's some
Eastern
Hindu in there as
mysticism
well.
in her speech. Like her food is super spicy. She calls it soul food.
Yes.
Then there's the whole like religious oppression thing. So this is like a clear shorthand of like, oh, this woman is a second-class citizen in this society, right? She is an undesirable.
What is it they follow in June? Zen Sunni Buddhism or something like
Yeah.
that. But yes, and I think this is a quite effective sort of and quite clever way to sort of hint at greater forces in the world and greater depth to the world beyond the things we've seen, right? Like, because again, we don't really get any concrete details on what she did, or is there a resistance to the empire? Are there terrorist groups out there? But by opening up the world on a spiritual dimension first, it gives it a little bit more of a lived-in feel, and
Right. I think the
obviously
thing is like I think that's a key rule of world building, right? Like multiple perspectives should exist in your world. Multiple religions, multiple cultures,
yeah.
multiple ways of looking at the world.
Yes. And I think as well, this is a very effective way of in-universe opening Renton's horizons, because he very clearly does not understand religion or any sort of concept of fate, predestination, karma, whatever you call it. He's very clearly confused and angry at the way this lady is behaving and how she's being treated and things like that. And that's not just him being stupid, it's a reflection of the naivete he has about worldly things,
Yeah.
which we've
I mean,
mostly played for laughs up to this point, but this is perhaps a
mhm.
more serious application of that.
Because it's a resentment both towards her cultural difference and towards her maturity, right? Because like her idea of like, oh, okay, so I attempted to escape being caught, that went wrong, so now I have been caught. Well, I'm gonna adapt to my situation. I'm going to play with the card that I've been dealt, with the hand that I've been dealt, and I'm not going to continue resisting or try to escape because I know that will only make my situation worse. Like she adapts and she is not bound or tied to her hang-ups, and that is a mature way of looking at the world, where
Right.
someone like Renton would be like, but the bad guys got you, aren't you going to fight back?
Yeah,
Like,
you must be resisting at 100% at
yeah.
every available opportunity. And yes, it's a very childish view of the world. It's a very sort of, again, naive view of the world, and I think it's a good example to show that he has no grasp of spirituality, because leaving aside the particulars of the Vodorak religion, it's very clear that part of the things he simply doesn't understand is how this woman can be so calm, how she can put her faith in something beyond the immediate situation, and this is one of the more effective uses, I think, of Renton as the childish proxy
Right.
there. You know,
It shows maturity as being more than just, being grown up or being like what are usually the shorthands for maturity in anime. It's like,
yeah,
being tall, physical characteristics, being sexually active. But of course, being mature means so many other
yeah.
things, right?
There's an interesting line here as well where when he is sitting and drinking the tea and at the table, he remarks that he enjoys the weirdness of the situation and that it's, quote, weird just like Eureka is.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that's interesting. I'm not going to say anything about it, but...
I mean, it can mean many things, right? But on the
Right.
most superficial level, it just means that he's exciting about things that are different,
Right,
which is of
yes.
course reflective of his entire motivation, which is to see the world and escape his boring
Yeah.
life with his grandpa.
Absolutely. We're going a bit out of order here, but I think that's good because we're just wandering a bit. I wanted to say that Gecko State are incredibly bad kidnappers. They are absolutely awful at kidnapping.
Yeah, we have probably missed the best thing about this episode, which is the excellent twist.
Yes. I thought you were going to say the excellent chase because I really like the chase.
The chase is also good. But the twist is just so well done because they don't give away they give away that there's going to be a B plot with Gecko State doing a thing while Eureka and Renton and the kids are out shopping, but there's nothing implying that it's going to be that these two plot lines are going to intermingle.
Well, except for the law of narrative causality.
Right. And then you find out that it's like as soon as that pipe bomb rolls into that living room, oh no, it's them, right?
Yes.
It's Gecko State. And then you start to think like, oh, this must be a mistake. And then it's like, no. Gecko State are just working for the state.
Yes. We actually are shitbags, yeah. Just a few bits about the chase. I think the chase is great. Granny has incredible bike moves. Really good sense of motion here. That's been consistent in this show since
also just a
1.
3-second pause when they drive into the laundry and Renton has to pick the bra out of his car.
that is also it's a very, very obvious joke, but by doing it as kind of like silently in the background and not drawing attention to it, it's very funny. I really, really like the shot where the Neavash is revealed as she pulls round the corner and past the house there. A weird, I don't remember there being as much of the mechs used as cars in this episode.
That's the thing, because I look at this, I'm like, how are they allowed to wreak havoc on this city by driving their mechs around at the town center? And then I realized, oh wait, they're in Naples. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, this is just like Sunday afternoon there, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But yes,
men on Vespa, people driving their cars in the middle of the road, chases happening, people getting kidnapped in broad daylight.
Terrorist attacks. The thing I meant more broadly, though, is that my memory of this show is that the mechs transforming into cars is almost a non-issue. It was just done so they could sell toys. But
it's this like is how actually, Kamen Rider nominally rides a bike.
Yes, but this is actually a pretty exciting and unique sequence where they do just drive the mechs around like cars, and it's great. It's really
and
good.
The size of the mechs also has an impact on
the
chase.
The chase does do a really good job of communicating how huge the mechs are compared to the little old lady on her bike, the surrounding buildings and all that.
I also love how she's just on a regular scooter, it's a sit-down scooter. It's not even one of those school bikes that you sort of ride. This is just a shitty Vespa that you drive to go get groceries.
I do think it's funny that all of the streets are exactly wide enough to drive a robot down, and but yeah, it's a great little
cities.
It's a great little sequence. I think that also this episode ties into Renton's maturity in another way, which is, again, it's an example of them breaking down his mental image of the Gecko State, right? In his mind, they were noble outlaws who always fought the system and, stood up against the man.
Yeah, turns out they're just cutthroat bastards who only care about money.
But then it turns out, actually, they might be better than that after all. But still, the shining knight image is dinged here, and that's important, obviously.
I mean, they just kill two birds with one stone. They get their gold and they get to kill a bunch of dudes.
Yes. One thing I wanted to note before we get onto that sequence, which is I think when they're in having the meal, Hilda drinks glasses of wine with her pinky out and in a very sassy manner, and that's a great little animated touch I really enjoy.
Also, they're having that one Brock stew.
Yes, absolutely. The double cross is obvious, obviously. But I do think setting it at sunset gives you some nice visual and atmospheric oomph there. It's quite an effectively tense scene before Renton comes in. I have no idea why he felt the need to wear his Goober tracksuit for this sequence, but
because he wants to keep his identity a secret. I guess. Yes, I don't know. No, because that is now his known identity. He is Tracksuit Boy from the magazine.
I have no idea how you hide a giant robot that close to the exchange without somebody noticing, but we'll let him go. With
robot stealth.
A lot of people die in this sequence. Yeah. Like they
No. They show that all of the army dudes left their mechs.
But they sure shoot down that plane. Like they shoot down that plane. First time we've seen them shoot the cannons on the Gecko itself, by the way. A bit more from Talho and Kengo here as well there. But it's a cool little action.
Not as bad as that one time when Eureka cut a dude in half.
He was probably fine.
He'll be mostly all right.
But yes, we get also some important plot and world building at the end of this episode as well. So the lady asks them to take her to, you'll have to tell me if I'm pronouncing this right, Ciudades del Cielo.
Ciudades del Cielo.
Yeah, okay, I got closer than
I don't actually speak Spanish, sorry.
You speak a bunch of adjacent languages to Spanish.
Yes. My thing here is going to be, are there actually multiple cities, or is that just a grammatical error?
It's probably a grammatical error. There are definitely multiple cities, but I don't particularly trust a Japanese crew in 2005 to have an excellent grasp of Spanish grammar.
Children.
Yes. But yes, I think actually, despite the fact that we've just had an exciting battle sequence, I think the scene of Gecko State talking serious politics at the end of this episode is actually pretty good. It shows that they are aware. They are plugged into what is happening, despite their kind of goofy.
And they did also go out of their way to save this lady, even though it did not seem to be in their best interests, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to go back to Ciudades del Cielo.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously, I think it's fairly obvious that they have history there. Something that happened in the previous episode that we didn't actually mention, but it's made clear that the rest of, at least the senior crew, the bridge crew, clearly know about Dewey Novak as well. Like they recognize him, they are talking about him.
Right. How long has he been in jail? Or like how long has it been since his king slaying? Has that been mentioned?
It's been a while. Like I think, I can't remember if we get an exact answer or not, but the implication seems to be a decade plus.
Right. Okay. Because Tallow and Holland aren't that old. Like they're supposed to be in their 20s.
They could be in their late 20s.
Yeah.
But it's anime, people start doing things at insanely young ages.
Yeah.
Renton's 14, but the precise time doesn't really matter. He's clearly been away for a while, and in a way that they weren't really expecting. There's a reference here to the King of the Woods of Nemi, which further surrounds all the king imagery that's been placed around Dewey.
Also, like an interesting thing is there does not seem to be a king anymore. Like the three sages seem to be the rulers of the known world.
Well, at least as far as we can see at the moment.
So, my idea was always is Dewey considered to be an enemy of the state because he killed the king? Or is he considered to be an ally of the current state because he allowed for this regime to replace the king?
I mean, the honest answer is I don't actually remember.
Right.
That's the thing, I can't answer that question because I don't know. And I wouldn't answer it anyway because finding out is fun.
Of course.
But I honestly don't remember what Dewey's political dimension is. Clearly he is somebody who was seen as extremely dangerous, but not dangerous enough to be permanently disposed of, right? So they put him away somewhere where he would be out of the way. And we saw the
Could
three
be
sages.
useful, like Hannibal
Yeah,
Lecter.
we saw the three sages react to the idea of releasing him forebodingly in
Right.
earlier episodes.
That is true, yeah.
So clearly he is a dangerous man.
Yeah.
And we
do
also
not enjoy working together with him.
and we know that he worked with Renton's father on whatever he was working with back in the day, which, by process of association has something to do with the Amita drive, the Nirvash, Eureka, all of that stuff. So we're sort of ramping up Dewey's. Now you've got me doing it. See, we're ramping up his involvement here. Sort of building an aura around him. As we alluded to, clearly something bad happened to Gecko State at Ciudades del Cielo. I'll never be able to pronounce that.
City
properly.
of the Sky.
Yes, yeah, but so obviously we are headed there next episode. So I think it doesn't take a genius to work out that we are about to delve into some heavy backstory for our main characters here.
I mean, seeing as this show is still an anime, we are sort of closing in on a quote-unquote season finale or a core finale.
Yes.
Like, I'm assuming something major will happen by episode 12, because that's usually how these things go.
Yeah, there's actually, we'll talk about it when we get there, but there's a very easy way to tell the important episodes where stuff happens. But yeah,
because the title is something like Goku dies in magma.
Goku is Ginyu and Ginyu is Goku. No, unfortunately, we do not get Koji Kabuto dies in magma level titles here, although sometimes I wish we did there.
Renton Thurston drowns in a vat of lemonade.
Yes, final shot, Eureka has the headache of foreboding.
Yes,
which
she is suffering from Victorian withering disease.
Yes, something like that. Bit of an anime cliche, but I do like the atmosphere in these final scenes, as things become a little bit, Holland and Tauho talk about their painful memories. Eureka is sort of alone at night. We see the children asleep and stuff that.
Sort of gives the playtime is over vibe, right? Because this episode starts as just another wacky filler adventure, and then, hello, it's me, the plot. Remember me?
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting about these two episodes is they kind of start as one thing and gradually morph into another, because episode 7 is obviously, let's put it mildly and say it's kind of disposable, to be honest.
If
no
you
matter
cut
my
out
affection
the reveal about the Corellians. Yeah.
Yes. But I think it's quite elegant how episode 8 pivots from being a more light-hearted episode into something not necessarily darker, but more spiritual, more dedicated to, more interested in building out the world and sort of giving us a glimpse into where we're going as far as the themes of the show are. I mean, how did you feel about these two as a set? Obviously, I think there's some highs and some lows here.
That's the thing, right? I think episode 7 was an indicator of ooh, this is the part where sometimes you can go a little bit wrong with filler, where characters act in a way that may be a bit detrimental to their role in the greater story. But then episode 8 is a rectification and sort of brings you the best of both worlds, right? It gives you fun, character-focused filler, quote-unquote, bits at the start, and then it very cleverly pivots in a way that is both character-driven and plot-driven. Because it's the pivot from filler episode to plot-related episode almost comes coincidentally with the reveal that it's Gecko State hunting the woman.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job of tying those threads together in the back. Yeah. I will say that in episode 8, I just want to mention I do kind of it's very brief, but the little foray we get with Renton and Eureka and the kids, they feel a little bit like a family for the first time. Yeah. They feel obviously
groceries. Also, the whole school books thing, which is pretty funny. How Eureka gets school books for Renton as well.
Yes, he is doing some 5th grade math there, which is funny because I don't think any of them are exactly 5th grade age. But yes, it's cute.
Hey man, you gotta learn the circumference of a cylinder.
Yeah, it's cute that he does it anyway because he wants to make her happy. Of
course he does it. Yeah,
yeah, but and he wants to set a good example. You know, it's just a fun little character piece there, and that's what I think mostly of these 2 episodes. You know, I think that I like them, even though, you know, episode 7 is kind of all over the place and episode 8 is half and half. But there's some good building out of character here and some good jokes. You know, I think Renton being in the sauna but still wearing his stupid helmet is very funny. It's a great visual.
How else is he gonna communicate with the team?
I think Moondoggie just going through the sauna but still completely dressed is insane and great. I like that dude dumping that bowl of ramen over Renton's head. It's good. You know, and like I said, I appreciate the surrealism of the ice cream scene. Now, if only I could find a bowl of ice cream that big.
Good afternoon, 47. Your target for today is a man who wears a wig and has a tattoo on his back of a famous person.
Hell
he
yeah.
was last seen in a sauna.
Hell yeah, I would absolutely play that Hitman level. Yeah, I think that about does it for this week. Yeah. You know, anything else you wanted to add?
I think overall, 7, probably the weakest episode so far. 8, probably the strongest episode so far.
You think it's the best episode? That's interesting to me. Yeah,
because it gives a nice balance between the slice of life character-focused stuff. It has some action in it, but it also has the good world building, the hints at bigger themes, at bigger things going on.
Yeah,
it's a nice microcosm of what this show is so far. Right?
And I think that's important, you know, because obviously there will be fluctuations in quality as you go. You know, like no show is perfect, and there will be some weak episodes. There will be some strong episodes going forward. You know, so I think that. I like that you liked this episode. You know, I'm not sure I personally would say it's the best episode we've had so far, but I think that the fact that you liked it is encouraging for the stuff we've got.
Perhaps I'll say regular episode.
Okay,
like,
sure.
Because
the debut episode
was, of course, very strong. Yeah.
But yes, point taken there. Anyway, so that does it for another week. So as always, you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and on YouTube, of course. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you're interested in. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. And we will catch you again in a couple of weeks. Take care.